As the regime of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad collapsed following 13 years of civil war, a power vacuum has emerged, one that could reshape the entire region. But while the world is focused on the future leadership of Syria, Israel has begun an aggressive military campaign into the Golan Heights and carried out airstrikes across the country. So what does this mean for Syria's future? And could Israel's actions ignite a broader regional conflict? Joining me to discuss this is Israeli journalist and author Gideon Levy. His latest book is titled The Killing of Gaza, Reports on a Catastrophe. I want to thank you so much for joining me. It's good to see you as always, sir. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office has revealed plans to expand Israel's control over the Golan Heights. He declared, "We will continue to hold on to it, make it flourish, and settle it." Israel has also already forced entire towns to evacuate and aims to double the number of settlers that are in the area. Several reports also state that Israel has expanded its scope beyond Golan further into Syria. What's going on here? What's Israel's plan?
Israel's plan is to take opportunity of any weakness that the Arab world shows. It is always very clever for the short run. I'm not sure it's so clever for the long run, because it's always based on military power. The fact that Syria is now shaking, instead of what I would have done or suggest, instead of trying to offer a different path for Syria, maybe opening a new chapter, maybe opening a new vision. Instead of this, Israel is bombing Syria and occupying territories from Syria, from sovereign Syria. For the time being, it's a great success because Syria has now problems rather than the Israeli attacks. And you saw also that the new leadership said nothing about what Israel is doing, except of saying that maybe now it's enough. But for the long run, it's rather depressing because, again, Israel is portraying itself as the regional bully who will always use military force in the first priority and never give chance to other options.
There are Israeli politicians who have openly talked about how Israel should extend its borders beyond the current borders into parts of Syria, Iraq, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Lebanon. This idea of a kind of greater Israel has been one that's been talked about increasingly over recent time. Netanyahu has now ended the 50-year ceasefire pact with Syria and declared that this, quote, hasn't happened in the 100 years since the Sykes-Picot Agreement, referring, of course, to the 1916 agreement between Britain and France that carved up the Middle East. Do you believe Israel is trying to redraw the borders of the Middle East and annex Syria, at least in part, as part of this vision of greater Israel?
I have news for Netanyahu and for those who believe in those visions. Colonialism passed away a long time ago, and the only remained colonialist country is Israel. And Israel is trying to implement it. I don't think that all your descriptions, I mean, it's not yours, it's those who express them, are serious. Nobody believes that it is possible. Why not include Russia as well? Russia is also in certain times a danger for Israel. So why wouldn't we conquer Russia as well? And if we are in Russia already, why wouldn't we go for China? I mean, there are also limits to megalomania. And Israel's megalomania, in any case, is far too high. I must remind you that only the occupation of the West Bank and Gaza, which are small, little, tiny parts of the big Palestine from the British Mandate times, only this destroyed Israel over the year and made it into a pariah state. So we better think, how do we get rid of those occupations and not have any dreams for more and further occupations, even if the new elected American president will give Israel a free hand, which I'm not sure it will be the case. In any case, much will depend on Donald Trump, and I hope that he will be the one to stop Israel.
You said something recently that struck me. You said that, quote, these territorial swipes will be the pretext for another war. What do you mean by that?
It's very clear Israel has a dispute in the Lebanese border over a tiny, tiny piece of land, the Shaba farms. This was an issue for friction for years. It wasn't the only reason for wars between Hezbollah and Israel, by all means not. But it was a very good excuse to all kind of tensions between the two countries. So if Israel will now, I mean, this photo of Netanyahu on top of the Syrian Mount Hermon, which was an arrogant picture of a colonizer, nothing else but this. This might pass now, but will not be forgotten. And time will come, and new Syrians will come, and they will say, this is unacceptable. There is international law. Someone has to respect sovereign territories. There are borders to what Israel can do, and there are borders to any country. What do you mean? Imagine yourself, Mexico, just conquering part of the United States, even a small part. Would the United States keep silent, or would it create a war? It might create a war, obviously. So that's the same case here.
Understood. Syrian opposition group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, also known as HTS, has been somewhat cautious in their response toward Israel's aggression, at least so far. They've declared that they will, quote, not let Syria be used as a launch pad for attacks, but that, quote, strikes must end and Israel has to pull back to its previous positions. How do you think Israel will ultimately orient itself toward HTS?
Look, nobody knows where are they aiming. They have a very bad record and a very promising present. Their past is really very problematic, and I can understand the concern in Israel from all kinds of Islamist jihadist organizations who took over Syria. On the other hand, ever since they took power, they are not only very cautious, they are also quite moderate and quite surprising, not only about Israel, about women's rights, about many things. Maybe it's all camouflage, and once they be based in power, everything will get back to what it used to be. But maybe also they came to the conclusion that the way for prosperity, for stability, goes through the West and goes through good relations with the neighbors. So time will show. Once Israel conquers a piece of land, and this we know from history, it becomes Israel's property. And then to evacuate it takes years and many wars.
Early on in the Syrian civil war, Israel's then ambassador to the U.S. Publicly called for the ouster of Assad. He stated, we always wanted Bashar al-Assad to go. We always preferred the bad guys who weren't backed by Iran to the bad guys who were backed by Iran, a claim that Netanyahu's office later denied. In 2019, former Israeli Army Chief of Staff Gadi Eisenkot acknowledged that Israel provided weapons to Syrian opposition groups and carried out thousands of attacks in Syria. Given all of that, was this the outcome that Israel wanted?
My guess is that Israel wanted stability, and stability until now was Bashar al-Assad. Nobody had foreseen this collapse. And my recommendation is obviously that Israel should mix at all in domestic issues among its neighbors. Imagine yourself Syria mixing in who will be the next prime minister in Israel. I mean, it's somehow we accepted that Israel has the right to decide who will be in power in Syria or in Lebanon or elsewhere. No, Israel has no right to this. Israel has to recognize that there are limits to its power. There are limits to power in general, but also to Israel's power to intervene in other countries. But we look now forwards, and now is the time to let Syria recover and not to interfere anymore. Let them recover. It's a very intelligent people. It seems it has now an intelligent leadership, too early to judge. Let them recover. Don't interfere. Turkey shouldn't interfere. Nobody should interfere now, because if everyone will have his own interests, Syria will be torn again, and then we'll see another civil war.
Right now, we can say somewhat indisputably that Hezbollah has been weakened militarily and structurally. We also have seen, of course, the collapse of the Assad regime in Syria. In light of these developments, Israeli military officials, anyway, are discussing this as a kind of strategic opportunity to strike Iran's nuclear facilities. There was a Times of Israel report that stated that the Israeli Air Force has increased its preparations for these type of potential strikes on Iran. Do you think that this will actually happen, or is this just a bluff?
Look, my guess is as good as yours, and I really don't know. For many years, we were told that Israel cannot do it by itself without the United States. I'm not sure that the United States is ready to get into an attack over Iran. I'm not sure at all. For sure not Donald Trump, who is speaking about the opposite, who speaks about getting out from all problematic areas. But Israel is now quite moved and motivated by its successes, and it feels it has some kind of momentum that shouldn't be missed. And therefore, I will not be surprised if we'll wake up one morning and we'll hear that the Israeli Air Force is on its way to Iran. Again, it might succeed, it might be a catastrophe, a fiasco. Experts explain us that you cannot stop Iran anymore from getting nuclear weapons only by treatment, by agreement, not by force, because by force you can only get a certain delay, a very limited delay, some kind of postponing it, but not more than this. So let's cross our fingers that Israel will do something clever for a change.
Gideon Levy, thank you so much for joining us on UpFront.
Thank you, Mark.
All right, that is our show. UpFront, we'll be back next week.